Hi, everybody. Thank you for trying to join us today. We don't quite have everybody here yet, so we're just going to wait for a little bit. And then Colt is setting you each up, each of the board members up, so that you are presenters, so that you can talk freely and discuss back and forth. Hopefully there will be, Colt, do they have a hand raise option on theirs that they can
Everybody has a hand raise option.
Speak? Okay.
Yeah, and for anybody who's not a board member or made a presenter, that's probably the best way to try and ask a question, either that or to use the questions feature on the side. I talked about with Allison that I will make sure to announce and read the question as to who said it, so that when she's reviewing the recording and creating minutes, we have that information if we're doing. And then for staff, if you're asking a question, please say who you are, as if we were on a conference call, so that when Allison goes back forward and is looking at minutes historically, she can track who said what and asked what. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. Eric is only connected by audio, so that's why he's having, I can't make him a presenter, but he's unmuted.
Okay.
Is there...
Eric, can you just say something, make sure we've got you?
I am here.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
And it looks like we've got Scott Erickson here.
Yeah.
Marie, did you mean me, Scott Morrison?
Oh, Scott, I didn't see you there in the list. Do we have Scott Erickson too?
Scott Erickson, but there's people still joining, so it's, there he is. He's not connected yet to audio, but he is logged in.
Okay.
So I don't know that that means he's going to be able to fully participate, but he is logged in. Got Baird.
What other board members do we have?
This is Barbara Gardner in here.
This is Roger Friedel. I'm here.
I don't see Blake Tullis on yet.
I don't see Christy Bell. The other one she's on the attendees list. Okay, I'll grab her then. There she is.
Welcome, Michael.
And anybody's welcome to turn on their camera. Like I said, I dressed for the board meeting.
I'm really feeling underdressed now, Colt. Darn it. I was, just.
I just wanted to make sure I remembered how to tie a tie. Jeff Coombs. Is Jeff Coombs in there? I don't see him. I don't see Jeff Coombs. I don't see Blake Tullis. Barbara Gardner, Eric Franson, David Pitcher.
Can you hear me now?
Who was that?
Christy Bell, can you hear me now?
Yeah. And you should be made a presenter now, so you have the ability to turn on your camera and mute and unmute yourself. Okay. I don't know if everybody heard this, but when Marie and I were in the pre-conference just before this, just if you're not speaking, please mute your mic. It'll eliminate background noise. I have my first grader here who's already interrupted once, so we'll try and limit that. If you've got, your kids who like to pop in to see any other living adult other than you, go ahead and mute to try and keep them. It'll just kind of control the meeting a little bit better. I think we're still adding some people. It looks like rural water staff is here. Michael, do any of your staff need to be able to speak at some point during this, or can we just unmute them if they do?
I think we can just unmute them if they do. I invited them to the meeting just to be aware of what's going on.
Perfect. Anybody who is in attendance, you have a hand raise feature and a questions feature. Go ahead and use that. If you have a question. What is the hand raise feature?
What is the hand raise thing? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm an idiot.
Hey, we're all learning this. We're all learning this very, very quickly. Got that side panel there. It's got like a red or an orange arrow at the top, and then a green button for your microphone and a green one with the camera.
Got it.
You see that, Roger?
Where's the hand raise feature? I don't see that.
It'll be next to your name. And if you're a presenter, you don't have it because you don't need to raise your hand. So you actually won't have it, Roger. So you're not an idiot. I am for not pointing out that you don't have it anymore as a panelist. This is for people who are attendees. If you're just sitting in the audience and you're not a panelist, and only board members and Michael are panelists right now. I'm an organizer, Allison's an organizer. So if you're just in the audience, that's mostly going to be for rural water staff and Michael's staff. If you have questions or anybody who's with the public, you can use the questions feature or raise the hand feature, and that'll give an alert, and I can do that. One other thing we talked about, and I want to say it again, if you're asking a question, please identify yourself beforehand, so that if Allison's going back and when Allison's going back and creating minutes on this, he knows who asked what.
Okay, there we go.
And we just had another attendee pop in. Eric, because you're only on audio, you will have you can unmute yourself and you have the hand raising feature option.
Yeah.
Because you're not on as a presenter. Oh, Christy, are you? I thought we promoted you. Oh, we did. Okay, you're in there twice.
Well, I want to get promoted too. That sounds fun.
You are.
We have that ability. We can take care of you, Scott.
Scott, this is the rare instance where I get to promote you.
Yeah, enjoy it, Colt. Enjoy it.
Just, pay it forward someday.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, everybody should be in, except I think we're still missing Jeff Coombs and Blake Tullis. I think are the only ones that I see missing. And I mean, if you have a quorum or if you're ready to start, you can go. And I can just monitor the attendees list and promote them as they see coming in, and I can send them a message about what we're doing.
All right, maybe. Roger, are you ready?
I'm glad to welcome everybody here to this unusual meeting. We appreciate you coming and supporting. And I think we'll turn the time over and get our roll call.
All right.
Marie.
First of all, just a logistic. We are recording this meeting. So we'll have a recording of the whole thing, and we may look into whether the recording itself will suffice for minutes or if we need to still do a transcribed minutes. But just be aware that this entire meeting will be recorded for public meetings' sake. So with that, we'll go ahead and do a roll call. Roger Friedel?
Yes.
Christy Bell? Christy, we didn't catch anything. Are you muted?
I think she lost herself again.
Okay, we'll come back.
There she is.
Eric Franson,
Yes, here.
Scott Morrison,
Here.
Barbara Gardner,
I'm here, sorry.
thank you. Scott Baird,
Yes, here.
Dave Pitcher,
Yes, I'm here. I assume you heard me.
yes, we got that, thank you. Blake Tullis, Jeff Combs. All right. Christy Bell.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
All
All
right.
right. We do have a quorum, and any of the board members, we have put you in the mode where you can control your own microphone. And if you want to, you also have the ability to enable your camera and join us via camera, or you can just be audio only along the way. If you are on audio only or camera and would like to raise your hand to speak, we can do that. If you're not on mute, then you'll be able to just speak up and participate with the meeting. So we'll see how this goes, and thank you for your patience in doing a virtual drinking water board meeting. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Chairman Friedel. We do have a quorum.
Okay, well, thank you. I can't hardly, what the heck? I got to watch my language in this meeting, don't I?
Yes.
It'll be recorded for posterity, Roger.
Awesome, awesome. I can't even get to my flipping agenda, so whatever's next on the agenda will go there, okay?
Would you like to pass it back to me, Roger? So we do have a public comment period on the agenda. We've been putting that on every agenda. This would be an opportunity if anybody would like, that is on the meeting, that would like to speak at some point, would like to just go on the record and be acknowledged for a public comment. Now would be the time to raise your hand or enter into the chat that you would like the ability for a public comment on this, anything that was on the agenda, or anything else, and we can cycle back around to that. So we'll have Colt kind of watching out for that. And then Colt, if you'll just let us know if anybody does request to speak.
Blake Tullis did just join, and I just made him a panelist and let him know. So you do have one more board member there. And I'll just keep watching that, and I will let you know if there's questions. Do you want to just pause and periodically ask for questions, or do you want me to interrupt at a convenient point?
Both.
Okay.
All right. Welcome, Blake. We will officially put you on the roll call as here. Blake, are you able to speak and confirm?
I think so. When you did the roll call, I couldn't unmute, but now that's been fixed, so I think I'm good.
Okay, great. All right. The reason we called this impromptu board meeting was for one specific agenda item. We have been watching the other boards that give out funding and some of the actions that they are taking, and wanted to present to this board the option of putting a program in place or a policy in place to allow those who have existing SRF loans with our board to defer payments related to hardships from the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was the intent. In your board packet, there was a memo that Michael Grange put together to give some information to the board. And we just wanted an opportunity for the board to discuss this. and decide what direction they wanted to go. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Michael to step through the memo and the information that's there, and then we would encourage the board to have a discussion and ask questions and decide what you want to do.
Marie, can I ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, Eric, would you identify yourself where this is a recording? And
This is Eric Franson, and I know we've tried to do better about declarations of conflict of interest, and I probably should say that there are a number of these systems being considered that we have represented in the past, and not that I want to go through each and every one of them, but you know, just to be clear, we have represented some of these systems in securing these funds, and I just wanted to say that I don't believe that changes the discussion today, but I felt like probably should say that on the record.
Do we have any other board members that need to disclose a conflict of interest or a
Yes,
potential
Marie,
conflict of interest?
This is Scott Morrison speaking. I'm the general manager of Mountain Regional Water, and we are one of the districts that's listed on the those folks that have loan payments towards the end of this year.
Any others?
This is David Bitcher. I likewise work for Central Utah Water Conservancy District, and we have one loan that we're repaying currently on that list. Anyway, we can talk about. I don't think this is going to affect us, but that would be a potential conflict.
All right, Roger, we've had 3 potential conflict of interest disclosed. Would you like to lead the discussion with the board? Just a reminder, what we've done with that in the past is there's a few different options. One, we can allow those board members to be part of the discussion but not vote. We can allow them to both discuss and vote if the board feels like the conflict of interest is not going to undermine that vote, or we could ask the board members to be removed from that vote. I do not believe we would have a quorum if we took the third option and asked all 3 of those board members to step out of this discussion and vote. So Roger, I'll turn that back over to you to facilitate that discussion.
Okay, board, what do you think? Are you good with everybody participating and voting? Or what's your ideas? I'm comfortable with them participating fully in the discussion and the vote.
I'm fine with both, with everyone participating and voting as well.
I don't see any problems right now. If it did appear later on, there might be a problem. Can we rediscuss this? But I'm guessing there won't be. Okay.
Yes. I think we got it, Marie. Or
we didn't hear from Barbara.
Oh, Barbara?
I am having a hard time muting and unmuting myself. My computer's very slow. I do not have a problem.
Okay, looks like everybody's good with participating fully.
You want to have an official vote for that?
Yes, that'd be good. Who would vote for everybody participating unless something comes up? All in favor?
Would you like me to do a roll call just by the nature?
Sure, that'd be fine. That'd be good.
Okay. Roger.
Total participation, yes.
Christy? Christy, a vote on yay or nay for total participation on all of the board members that declared conflict of interest.
You're unmuted now, Christy.
Sorry, mine froze for a second. So if you said something to me in the last 10 seconds, I got nothing.
We're taking a roll call vote of participation of all of the board members, so it can be an official vote. So it's up to you, yay or nay on full participation.
Yay.
Okay. Eric Franson,
Yes.
Scott Morrison,
Yes.
Barbara Gardner,
Yes.
Scott Baird,
Yes.
David Pitcher,
I'll say yes, but I'll also suggest that one of the board members make the motion, which we're conferring to, right?
That's a
Someone
good
put their
idea.
name to the motion.
This is Roger, and
I
I'm a
thought-
board member, and I made the motion. We need a second.
Oh, this is Christy Bell. I'll second it.
Okay.
I'll say yes.
Blake Tullis,
Yes.
and Jeff Combs is still not attending the meeting, so he's absent. All right.
Oh, affirmative. All votes were all affirmative.
Okay, so with that, we will then turn the time over to Michael to have that discussion, if that's okay with you, Roger.
Yes.
Okay.
Please do. Michael.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon. Thank you to everyone for your time for this board meeting today. My thanks especially to Sky Sieber and Heather Petit, who are the ones that did the phone calls for the information that we have assembled in our memo that's in the board packet. This was kind of a last minute assignment for them, and they took it on readily and were able to gather this information for us. So as Marie mentioned, we've been in discussions with some of the other funding agency boards within the state and with the state treasurer, David Damschen. And we are moving forward on establishing policies and procedures for allowing those entities that have revolving fund loans through the Drinking Water SRF to allow them to, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, have some financial relief if they need it and if they request it. So what we did after our initial discussions is we looked at the number of loans that were due throughout the rest of 2019, and I put that information in the memo, but just briefly, we have 17 loan payments that are due between May 1st and June 30th. Another 28 loan payments are due between July 1st and September 30th. And then another 33 loan payments are due between October 1st and December 31st of 2020. Excuse me. So we didn't get in touch with all of those systems, but we probably got 90% or 95% of them. And based on those conversations, the systems are involved themselves in providing financial relief to their customers. They're using such measures as delaying payment due dates, accepting partial payments, not shutting off water for lack of payment, and other methods of providing this relief. However, most systems did respond that they don't see any issues with payments during 2020, but they could see some financial stress in 2021 and beyond if this emergency is not resolved quickly. What that would mean for the board as we consider future financial assistance to our water systems between May 1st and December 31st, we have almost $5 million in loan payments due from our loan recipients. So if we looked at a worst case scenario, if all of those systems failed to make their payments, that could be an 8% reduction in total revenue to both the state and the federal programs for the remainder of 2020. But again, based on information, that's not likely to be the case. We could see some requests for deferrals or restructuring between now and the end of 2020, but we don't expect all of them to request that. The greater threat that we saw through all of this is for 2021. The information that we have shows that there are 101 loan payments due in January of 2021 with a value of almost $4.2 million. There are 112 loan payments due the first quarter of 2021. That includes those 101 for January. So from January 1 through the end of March of 2021, we have 112 loan payments that are due with a total value of $4.5 million. So again, you're looking at a worst case scenario. If all 112 of those loan recipients either defaulted on that first quarter payment or asked for a deferral, that would be another 17.5% reduction in revenue to the SRF programs. So what we've put together and what we're asking the board to consider is adopting a policy that will allow staff to proceed with granting these requests for loan deferrals, loan payment deferrals, and loan restructuring. The Water Quality Board has implemented such a policy. They directed their water quality, the Division of Water Quality staff to review their loans, and the Community Impact Board has also adopted a policy that will allow their staff to excuse me, dry throat today, that will also allow their staff to work on deferrals and loan restructuring for loans to water systems through the Community Impact Board. So just some side notes to all of this. The Council of Infrastructure Financing Authorities, or CIFA, has sent letters to Congress recommending changes to both the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund programs to streamline the financing process for projects. That letter was included as attachment 2 in the memo. AWWA has conducted a couple of surveys of water systems throughout the country. They got responses from about 512 water systems, and their initial read on all of this is that water systems could see financial impact, this is nationwide, of about $13.9 to $15 billion during the coming year, which is a 16.9% impact to those to the drinking water sector. And they are expecting communities to experience the total reduction in economic activity by as much as almost $33 billion over the course of the coming year. So this just gives us more information and more opportunity for discussion to determine what you as a drinking water board would like to implement, if you would like to implement something similar for our drinking water systems in the state of Utah. So we're submitting the following recommendations for you as a drinking water board to consider and approve if you wish. Number 1, we're recommending that the drinking water board adopt the attached debt relief policy and authorize staff to modify that policy to reference the Division of Drinking Water and Drinking Water SRF program requirements. And the second recommendation is that the Drinking Water Board authorize staff to develop policies and procedures to set the criteria that water systems must meet to qualify for debt relief under that policy.
Board, do you have any questions or comments?
I have one. This is Dave Pitcher. When you say attached debt relief policy, I missed it, or specifically to drinking water, or are you referring to CIBs?
We're referring to the CIB policy. We have not drafted our own. If the board wishes us to draft a specific policy for the board, we can do that. But we believe that the CIB policy is a good policy. We just need to change it to reference the Drinking Water Board and the Drinking Water SRF program.
This is Blake Tullis. I guess I have a question. It seems like it's probably the only rational thing to do is to allow debt relief. But my question is the consequence. In the end, will there be less money to loan in the next couple of years with these deferrals of payment, or what does that mean to this program?
It's very possible, depending on the volume of restructuring and loan payment deferral that we experience. The other thing that I forgot to mention is I did contact EPA Region 8 about our ability to restructure these restructure finances during this emergency, and we do, as a state, and you as a board, have the authorization and the authority to restructure debt as long as it is within the program structure that Congress has established in the Safe Drinking Water Act. So just to set that out there for you, this is something that the board does have authority to do. But to your question, yes, there may be some financial impact. As I mentioned earlier, it could be anywhere from $2 million to $6 or $7 million less revenue for the board if every water system that we have a loan with were to request a deferral. And that could happen for a year, maybe two, depending on their ability to document that this is actually caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
And those reductions in loanable monies, we're not necessarily talking debt forgiveness for anyone. It's just deferrals, so that money would eventually come back into the system. Is that right? Correct.
What we're looking at, and what all of the funding agencies are looking at, is a way to take that deferred payment and, through a couple of mechanisms, either write a new bond to spread that over the remaining life of the loan, or a new bond to take that particular missed payment and attach it to the end of the repayment period. So it will come back eventually. It will just take some time to get that money back into the fund.
Michael, this is Scott Morrison. Is a new bond structure required? And if so, who bears the brunt of the origination fees associated with it?
Yes, a new bond will be required. That's just strictly a mechanism from the bonding laws that are already in place. We cannot forgive the debt, and in order to stretch that out either over the life of the loan or at the end of the loan, we would have to draft a new bond. That is one of the cost of that. The cost of issuance is something that we haven't quite nailed down yet. We would prefer that the board give us direction in how to handle that. It could be forgiven as part of the new issuance. As long as we're not forgiving an existing debt, we could write that into the loan as either principal forgiveness on the federal side or hardship grant on the state side. But that, the staff would look to the board for the board's preference in how we handle that.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one question as it relates to time frame, and the sentence in the CIB letter is during the declared state emergency. I don't know. Time frame is uncertain. All of our situations are uncertain right now, it appears, and and then for 120 days following. Well, following what? Following the state emergency, I guess, is it's referring to.
Correct.
What's the possibility, and I know we can't answer this, of this reoccurring in the fall and the winter again? And so then at what point do we say this is the time frame they're initially talking about, and we can receive requests? Otherwise, it's kind of open. It's not defined, to me, at least.
And that was
Yes.
David Pritchard speaking right there. I just want to clarify that for the
Yeah,
record.
Dave Pitcher.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Dave, that's a really good point. And I'm not sure that that was completely understood, perhaps at the time that CIB drafted this policy. Based on the information that I've read over the last week or so, including this survey and study from AWWA, we could see water systems with financial stress related to COVID for a year or two. So again, it would be up to the board on how to proceed with this, but it makes sense to me to establish a time frame, but also establish the board's ability to revisit this in 6 months, a year, and re-examine it and reauthorize this policy for an additional 6 months, or whatever time frame the board deems appropriate. That way we have a time limit on it, but the board leaves themselves open to re-examine and extend if circumstances require.
Michael, this is Scott Morrison again. I totally agree with you, and not only for extension, but having been dealing with a challenging situation of my own at work, I recommend we also reserve the right to shorten this time frame as things continue to evolve. So I think the prudent thing to do would be to add a provision at the end which reserves that right to the board.
Good point. I agree.
Can we do that when somebody makes a motion?
You can. What we've talked about as staff is that we use this board authorization to actually prepare and revise the existing policy that CIB has, and that we bring it back to the board at the June meeting for actual board approval. And you would at that time have the opportunity to approve or disapprove whatever staff prepares. But we would definitely send that out prior so that you have a chance to review it and make comments before the board meeting, so that you're not caught completely unaware.
This is Eric Franson here. Would that include then this development of policies and procedures to
Yes.
set the criteria? So you would not only bring back the the policy itself, but also the criteria under which someone would qualify for the deferred payments or restructured payments.
Yes, that is correct, Eric.
This is Marie. It is my understanding that we don't have any of these water systems that currently have a loan that would need a deferral before that June timeframe. So we do have time with the board's direction of how they want to direct staff to put this together, to develop that, bring it back before the board in June, authorize it, and then move forward from that point on. So, this was about getting the board's direction to move forward for the staff, as well as answer some of the questions of what direction you would like us to go.
Sounds very good. This is Roger. Board, what do you want to do?
This is Dave Pitcher. I would suggest the time frame that I'm understanding is we're going to see not a flip of a switch, but we're going to see gradually changing, I'll say, and knowing more about that change by the end of the summer. So I think even June, I think is going to be early to have. So I think we should put out immediately a request for debt from recipients to defer loan payments through August meeting maybe, and then evaluate the criteria and policies in the June meeting, such that then people can still evaluate those policies and procedures before they have a deadline to submit it. The deadline could even be later than August. We don't know the time frame, so it's hard to put a deadline right now for people.
Yeah,
David, this
I
is
agree,
Maria.
Dave.
A follow-up question to that: Are you thinking that we would have staff put the criteria together, and then the board would evaluate each request for deferral, or develop a policy that puts the structure in place, and then the staff evaluate that criteria and authorize the deferral?
No, I was not suggesting that the board evaluate each application. I was just saying evaluate the criteria and structure.
Yeah, this is Eric Franson here. I think what we're getting to is the same thing, and that is drafting the policy and the criteria for our next board meeting, adopting some type of policy and criteria at the board meeting, and allowing the staff then to use that policy and criteria to make those decisions and administer the program at that point. And I go back to something that was said earlier. I don't know that we have many alternatives in this regard, right? I don't know that we have the option of doing nothing and allowing these systems to struggle. I guess we could say figure out a way on your own to get it done, but I think having some type of precedent set by other funding agencies and other boards, and I think this is the right way to go. I'm prepared to make a motion if we want to discuss a specific motion then.
Is there any further discussion?
Michael, did you get the answers to the various questions and guidance we were looking for from the board?
To this point, yes, I believe so.
This is Barbara Gardner. Can I just ask one additional question? The final document that was attached, the CIFA recommendations. Now, how is that also something that you're just going to take into account as you create your own policy, or how does that fit in?
The CIFA document was basically included with this memo to show that there is a national effort underway to provide some kind of relief, not only to the loan recipients, but to the state programs. And this is basically a petition to Congress to change the way the program is structured for the duration of this pandemic, to allow certain things to expedite the program and getting projects underway. One of the things that we've seen, or that I've seen, I don't know how many others have been looking at this, but the American Water Works Association survey also pointed out that there are some water systems nationwide that are deferring capital improvements until after things calm down and the pandemic has subsided to a certain extent. And so what CIFA is suggesting to Congress is to to relax some of these program requirements to help the state programs move the funding that's been obligated or authorized to them, so that we don't basically run into another instance where we have billions of dollars of unliquidated obligations sitting in the accounts waiting to be spent. So that's not necessarily for Utah to consider. It's just an indication of what is happening at the national level.
Okay, so that is not something that we would comment on because that's not part of this consideration.
Correct.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, are we ready for a motion?
I'm
I think
ready.
so. Motion maker, make a motion.
This is Eric Franson. I would make the motion that the Drinking Water Board authorize staff to draft a debt relief policy and to develop policies and procedures associated with that debt relief policy, establishing criteria that water systems must meet to qualify for debt relief under the said policy.
We have a motion by Eric.
This is Barbara Gardner. I second the motion.
Second by Barbara. Do we want a roll call, Marie?
I can do that.
Can we just
Or do you
ask
want
a
to just,
question on that too?
Yeah, should have some discussion maybe on the motion itself now that we've
okay.
heard it.
Any further discussion?
I appreciate, this is Dave Pitcher. I appreciate that motion. Do you anticipate that the criteria or the procedures would include some of these costs that systems are going to have to evaluate? If they know up front that interest charges would be pushed off, that bond costs would be pushed off, it helps them evaluate whether to submit or not. But if that's left in question, so I guess my question to Michael is, do you anticipate getting to that type of criteria?
I don't know that we'll get to that level of detail, but we can certainly mention in the policy that those particular costs will be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
I guess this is Eric Franson here.
Yeah.
I guess my interpretation of the criteria would be financial metrics and demonstrated financial impact from the water systems that they would somehow produce and provide in order to qualify for the program. I mean, they would have to have their ducks in a row, in the sense that they would have to know, okay, this is our normal revenue, this is our current revenue because of these issues. Therefore, we can show financial impact and we need relief under the program. I guess that was my interpretation of what the criteria may be.
Yes, that's correct. As I was going to say, we don't know at this point what the impact will be on a system level, and therefore I don't know that we can include numbers in the actual policy.
Right.
But general statements to that nature, where we are talking about the policies in place to grant financial relief due to reduced revenue, and refer to the policy or the procedure document attached to this policy for information on what you need to have in order to qualify or to apply and qualify.
Yeah, this is Eric again. I also believe, as was stated, that the situation is going to change rapidly, even over time. There may be federal relief, there may be other state programs that are implemented, and I do think we're probably going to be talking about this at board meetings for the foreseeable future to potentially alter, modify, change, extend, or even shorten what has been done. So I think this is just a first step in preparing the policies and procedures and criteria that then will need to be revisited fairly regularly as we move through it.
Yes.
So this is
And go ahead.
Blake Tullis. So this may not be necessary based on what you've said about the communication you've had with system operators and the need for debt relief immediately, but should there be a provision in the motion that there could be emergency action between now and July 9th, our next board meeting, if something needed to be done? Or would they just be deferred until after that meeting and the policies in place?
We can approach it either way.
This is Eric. When is the next board meeting? Again, June 9th?
June 9th, yes, June 9th. So about 5 weeks out.
Michael, you indicated there were 17 loan payments between May 1st and June 31st.
Yes.
Were we able to contact those 17? Is there any imminent need before the June meeting?
I did not get a chance to look at the actual data, so I don't know the answer to that question. But I can certainly find out. And the board can do emergency authorizations. Yes, we can certainly look at an emergency declaration by the board on a case-by-case basis.
We just have to call another meeting.
We would.
You know, I'm just wondering, that's a very good point. Is it worth a second independent motion to maybe take those? It's only actually about 12 that are due prior to the board meeting, and just saying, you know, if something comes up with those 12, we can authorize deferment until the board meeting itself, or until a decision is made, or something like that. I don't know. Rather than call a separate independent meeting if something comes up, just say, hey, between now and June 9th, if one of these systems does request, then the staff has, you know, I guess they can wait a month, because that's all we're talking about is a month, essentially.
So do you want to change the motion?
I don't know that I want to change the original motion. I'm actually thinking it might be a second separate motion. And do we need to vote on the first before a second motion is introduced? I'm not.
Probably. We have one motion out. Let's vote on it and then move into the next one.
Yeah.
Okay. We have any further discussion on this one? All in favor of voting for this motion as it has been, Eric's done?
I'll do a roll call, Roger.
Okay, that'd be fine, Marie.
Roger Friedel,
Yes.
Christy Bell,
Yes.
Eric Franson,
Yes.
Scott Morrison,
Yes.
Barbara Gardner,
Yes.
David Pitcher,
Yes.
Blake Tullis,
Yes.
and Jeff Combs, I believe, is still absent.
Motion passes. Okay, Eric, did you have another motion that you want to bring up here?
Well, maybe Blake can make it, since he's the one who I think it's a good point. I can, unless Blake wants to.
I can give it a go. I guess I move that if any payments occurring between now and the next board meeting of June 9th, if any of those are in difficult circumstances, that payment can either be deferred till after that board meeting, or they could be handled on a case-by-case emergency basis, whichever is most appropriate.
We have a motion by Blake.
This is Eric. I'll second that.
Second by Eric. Any further discussion?
This is Scott Morrison. The one point that I'd like to make is just that we inform those systems that, you know, the division doesn't own any potential penalties or costs associated with that, that's at their risk.
Good point.
Okay. Let's go roll call again.
Do we
All
need,
right.
Do we need?
sorry, would that be an official amendment that needs to be seconded and attached as far as that specific notification, or is that just understood? I feel like that needs to be specifically attached
That's fine.
as an amendment. So how does that work?
I don't have any idea. Marie?
The person
so
making
somebody-
the yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
No, I'll make an attempt. The person making the motion, the original motion, would have to accept the amendment to their motion. And then the second would have to re-second that. Is that how that works?
I do
Yes.
accept that amendment. This is Blake.
Okay, so Blake accepted the amendment and Eric Franson seconded the amendment.
So just
Okay.
to clarify, the amendment was to include notification to those systems that have a payment between now and the next board meeting of June 9th, that the SRF program is not accepting any liability or penalties associated with a deferred payment. Is that correct? That was the amendment?
Let me, this is a picture.
I don't
Was
know.
that your intent, Scott, or was it that we're willing to waive delinquent interest charges for those payments due before our June meeting?
I guess my intent was until the board established some structure for staff to evaluate these requests, that if a request or if, you know, if a system calls over the next 6 weeks or so and says we are unable to make our payment, you know, through this motion, we're saying that we are allowing the staff to give the authority for them to defer, but any costs associated, my intent is that any costs associated with that deferment are not owned by the division. Those cost liabilities are owned by the system, which they may not be defined fully at that moment, but just to be clear that the division doesn't own those liabilities. That was my intent.
This is Eric, and in theory, those liabilities would be resolved under the policy and criteria, right? I mean, you just can't answer that question because it hasn't been answered, so you can't officially answer it, right? Isn't that the?
That's correct, Eric. This is Scott again.
Yeah.
So the challenge is, we talked a little bit earlier about, for instance, the origination costs of a new bond, right? If deferments lead to a new bond structure and there are costs associated with establishing that structure, we don't want to give systems the false, you know, this false pretense of, oh, the division says that we can just defer, right? There may be costs and process that is associated with that deferment And those costs in that process are not defined at this moment.
Marie, do you know what we're doing?
I think I understand the intent. I still don't know that we have a defined amendment to the motion. The discussion was
Yes.
a long discussion, so I was just concerned that we didn't have a distinct amendment to the motion.
Do we have a distinct one now? Does anybody want to make a distinct amendment?
This is Dave Pitcher. I have a question without offering a distinct clarification on the amendment. What is the procedure that you currently have? You have a loan payment due, and if it is not made, then you start charging interest on that date or 30 days after? Or what's the procedure?
Yes, there's a 30-day grace period from the due date until penalties begin accruing. In the past, if the water system has a valid reason for making a late payment, and at this point, the only valid reasons that we're using or that we're accepting is that the invoice was either misdirected or they've had a change in positions within the water system itself and the invoice went to the wrong address, again being misdirected. And we do have authorization previously that I, as the Assistant Executive Secretary, can waive that penalty. And in the 9 years that I've been in this chair, I think I've probably waived maybe 10 or 11 late fees. So maybe 1 or 2 a year at the most. And there have been years where I've not done it at all. So we do get them occasionally. And the policy has been that if we get written notice from the water system explaining why the payment was late and the reasons are valid, we've waived those late fees. As long as they've made the payment, as long as the payment is being sent, and they can verify that the payment will be received soon as well.
May I then make a recommendation that the amendment be to authorize Michael to use the existing authority he has to waive the late payment for a payment that is due between now and the June 9th board meeting for COVID-related hardship without having to show proof that the payment is coming in anticipation for this new policy, and then they could be enveloped into the new policy that will be considered in the next meeting.
Board, are you good with that?
I
This is
can't actually
Scott.
make that motion though.
This is Dave Pitcher. I'll offer that as a substitute motion for the meantime.
Okay. We haven't, I don't know where we're at.
So if David is the one that offers that up as a motion, we'll need a second to that motion. And then Blake, who was the person who offered the original motion, will need to decide whether he accepts that or not. And then we can go back and make a vote.
Okay. So do
I
we?
believe. Am I wrong? Do we need 2 votes?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
And I think you're right, Marie.
Okay.
So we
So
don't need a vote? Do we
I'll
have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so Christy is seconding the amended, the motion, substitute motion or amendment motion. And then
This is Blake. I accept that amended motion.
All right.
Okay. All right. Now do
So
we need to
now
vote
we
on
can
this?
roll call. Yeah, I believe so. Is there
Okay,
any other discussion?
yes, any further discussion? All in favor? Or do you want a
Okay,
roll call, Marie?
I will do a roll call.
Okay,
Roger Friedel,
yes.
Christy Bell,
Yes.
Eric Franson,
Yes.
Scott Morrison,
Yes.
Barbara Gardner,
Yes.
David Pitcher,
Yes.
Blake Tullis,
Yes.
Jeff Coombs, still absent.
And motion passes. So, did that take care of everything that we needed to do here?
From my perspective on that particular motion, yes.
Do we need another motion for the staff and development policies?
No, that was included in Eric's initial motion.
Okay. Marie, do we have anything else, or Michael?
On the agenda, well, Michael, did you have anything else before we move on the agenda?
No, I don't. Thank you.
The next on the agenda was just a general discussion of COVID-19. If the board had any questions for the staff or wanted to have any discussion related to that.
Board, any questions or discussion?
Dave Pitcher, I would just offer that as we work through this, I agree with Eric that this won't be the last time we talk about this. The thing that we always have to keep in mind is our water systems have been disinfecting viruses for a long time, and what's paramount is the safety of the systems that we all work for and within, and the public safety. And most people don't recognize that. And we have to keep that paramount, that we keep it going with these financial considerations. And maybe even, depending what comes from the federal government, leverage that even to a point of emphasizing that importance to the economy. And most people don't recognize the interrelationship between the economy and the water systems that just keep on putting water out of the tap. So that's just a comment.
It was a good comment.
Related
Any
to
other?
that a little bit, this is Marie.
Marie.
I have been trying to follow and keep track of some of the stimulus and relief packages discussions going on back in Washington. And their moving target, I don't know where they will land, but there has been some talk about providing relief for revenue disruptions for water and wastewater systems. And there has been some discussion about routing that through the SRF program. So, you know, the discussion that we have had here in this meeting is valid, that the situation may change and there may be money that is sent towards this program with the intent to get it out to the water systems in a way that this program doesn't typically route money. I mean, right now, the SRF program is only allowed to give out money for infrastructure. So actual construction projects or planning associated with that. There has been some discussion of whether money would come that would be more operational based or relief based. So we'll pass that information as soon as we hear it and know that, but just be aware.
Thank you, Marie. Any further discussion?
I have another item. This is Eric Franson. I don't know if we're past COVID-19, but it's another item.
Yes, Eric.
I just wanted to make the board, and maybe you have all received the same letter. I have received some communication from East Grouse Creek Water Pipeline Company as it relates to an issue, I guess, and I just wanted to say that I've received it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I just wanted to say I received that in the mail.
So did I.
So
that question would be, does the board want to have a specific agenda item on that? Those letters were sent out preemptively to them ever being sent directly to me. I have since received those and been in communication with Julie Tanner on that and moving forward with a recommendation on that. But if the board would like a specific agenda item to address that, or if you'd like an update now, happy to do that.
That's a good question. How about would an update now put it to rest? Or
possibly.
I'm okay waiting too. I don't have, I would like some type of report, follow up, you know, at least a report on what has happened. And if that is a better given on the June 9th meeting, I don't have any issues waiting. If there's still things to be discussed and resolved or responses from them, if it's better to wait, I'm okay waiting. So,
I can give you an update and then you can decide.
Okay, all right.
So the situation that this system had in 1992, they had a series of positive bacteriological samples, and the director at the time put them under an order to disinfect. So they have a spring, one source. It's a small community, has about, I'm going to misquote this number, but they have less than 100 people that this system serves. And the one spring was required in 1992 to disinfect continuously. They proceeded to install a gas chlorine system, but was unable to maintain that gas chlorine system, and it fell into disrepair. That was discovered during a sanitary survey. And subsequent to that, they changed their chlorination process to a tablet chlorinator. However, they did not run through the division plan approval and to get authorization to switch from a gas chlorinator onto a tablet chlorinator. And they created a feed system that was locally built, so it wasn't a purchase system. They just created a process to dissolve these tablets directly into a distribution box downstream of their spring. They also began using trichlor tablets, which are the tablets that are used in swimming pools and are not an approved disinfectant for drinking water systems. This was discovered during their last sanitary survey in 2019, and they were given two deficiencies. One was for failure to provide continuous disinfection, and one for having a chemical feed system that was not approved by the division. Both of those are significant deficiencies, and in my communication with Julie Tanner, one was personally offensive, which triggered the communications that each of the board and the governor's office and all of the legislators and federal legislators and probably beyond that all received. So there was probably 30 or 40 of these letters that went out. that took offense to the deficiency that stated that they had not continuously disinfected because they had shown due diligence at taking chlorine residuals and showing a chlorine residual. The reason the staff issued that deficiency is that by using the swimming pool type tablets, that the chlorine residual that they took is not reliable. So the chlorine residual method that is utilized is not sufficient for that particular chemical. So the chlorine residuals they have been reporting were likely to be higher than the actual chlorine residual that was in place. So the staff was not certain that they had continuously disinfected because of the chemical. As I talked with Julie, I am comfortable that one deficiency would be sufficient instead of both deficiencies since they both address the same issue. However, I am looking for their commitment to actually resolve the situation before I remove the second deficiency, and the first deficiency will stay in place until the chlorine system is transitioned and approved and implemented that is according to NSF standards and our standards. So that's where we stand at this point. I told Julie that I would be willing to consider removing the second of the two deficiencies since they were in some way redundant of each other. But before I made that call, I would want to see commitment from them that they will actually resolve this situation, because those deficiencies allow us to apply pressure to them to get that deficiency rectified. And so I'm looking for commitment from them that they will make that change. She verbally gave that to me, but she also has a committee or a board that she has to get that approved through. So until there's some sort of documentation or movement forward with that, I would say the situation is at a stalemate until we see documentation from them. And so I guess any other questions or what would the board like additional to that report?
No, that's, I think that's a good report, and sounds like the division is doing what you should be doing, which is protecting public health. So that's good. I just wanted to make sure that was out there and acknowledge that I did receive it. And so that's good. I appreciate that report. Marie, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marie.
One additional piece to that is we did recommend a solution for them, which would be to be able to continue to use tablets, just authorized tablets. There is a feed system that can be purchased for about $450. They would have to figure out how and where to install that. But the letter that you received was in resistance to implementing that $450 upgrade.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, board?
I have one other item under other.
Yes.
The board is scheduled to have a meeting on September 1st. That was originally scheduled to happen at the Rural Water Fall Conference. Rural Water has delayed that conference. I am not certain that it's been rescheduled, but it will not occur on September 1st. So the staff is recommending that the board maintain their previously scheduled board meeting on September 1st and that it just move to the board room if we are allowed to have them in person, or maintain that date on a virtual if we're still doing that.
That sounds good.
I would
Okay.
also anticipate the staff is planning on the next board meeting in June 9th to be virtual, unless we hear otherwise. So just so that you guys are aware, we will proceed with planning that as a virtual meeting.
Marie,
good.
Dale Peterson's raising his hand. I assume he has information on the fall conference. So I'm gonna
Yes, this is
unmute
Dale.
Dale.
This is
Dale,
Dale
you're
Pearson.
unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I turned green. I assumed I was okay. Not physically green, microphone green. The fall conference has been scheduled to October 5th, 6th, and 7th. So just so you're aware. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dale. And if the board is still interested in attending that conference, as they have before, we as a division can still facilitate that.
Okay. Do we need, we'll decide by June 9th. Do we have anything else we need to talk about, Marie?
That was everything on the agenda.
Okay. We need one more motion then.
I'll make a motion then. I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion. Second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
everybody.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Marie, Michael. Have a good day.
You too.